Since I started doing HVAC rebuilds and providing guys with do-it-yourself kits, I've been asked a ton of times if I could come up with a video showing how to get these units apart. So I'm finally getting around to it. I've got 2 units to do in the next 2 weeks, so I'll give you a quick tutorial on getting these things apart. To make things simple, I already slid out the heater core. Basically, you got to remove the side panel that holds the tubes in place, and you need to push it out. You've got to be careful when you're pushing. You don't want to pound on the end because it's just copper and you'll collapse it. From what I understand, the new heater cores, which are in the Gen 2 cars, they're made of aluminum. They're slightly smaller, so there's a bit of a loose fit, and there has to be some modifications on the housing. It's all minor to get the tubes to fit in place, but the tubes do line up to your lines coming up to the front firewall. So here we go. All right, first thing we're going to do, we're going to remove some of the gear drives and cams. Very easy to do. You'll notice there's grease all over the place. It's a silicone grease that Honda puts on, which I'll clean off when I do the unit. I pressure wash the entire unit when it's completely dismantled, get it super clean. I'll repair any cracks that are in the housing, which occasionally I get, especially on the drain tube over here, because it's not packed right, and sometimes it collapses the drain tube from shock transporting, and it requires a little bit of repair with JB Weld plastic bond. So I'm just going to loosen this up. I can take this off or leave it on. I'll take it off for now, but to take it off, you want to make sure that you do not rotate you don't want to spin that around. You want to try and lay that down so it doesn't move, otherwise you're going to be readjusting this per the manual. Alright, one of the tricky things is to get these 2 gears off. Can we see them? Yep, we can see them. Alright, these 2 gears off, they're held in place by little pins. I've made a special tool. I sacrificed see if I can get this to focus there. Not really. I sacrificed a pair of needle nose pliers. What I did is I filed down one tip. The other tip I left alone. And so what this does, it fits into the groove right behind the little locking device. Get it in there. And I'm going to pull the locking device back, and then I'm going to release it, lift up, pry up on that, and it's off, and it's intact. If you try and pull this back with a screwdriver, it's very difficult, and chances are you're going to snap that little tab off. So we'll do the other one over here. Pry it up a little bit, release it, and it's off. Piece of cake. Without that tool, that was a bit of a pain to do. So, alright, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the bottom case off. Alright, you'll notice all these screws around here. You don't want to lose the screws. So you're going to take all the screws off the bottom case. You're going to put them in some kind of container so you don't lose them. They're all the same. There's no difference between any of the screws. This one happens to be having the drive motors all off of it already. I've got them stored away somewhere. So they would have mounted on the sides. You had a drive motor here, you had another drive motor here, and you had another drive motor here. They're very easy to come off. They're usually held in, they're held in place with 3 screws. Just unscrew them, take them off, and put them someplace safe. Now I'm going to continue to remove the screws, holding the case, bottom case on. This will expose the evaporator. All right, over here, you want to, there's a screw here, which I already removed. And we're going to have 2 screws here. Another screw here. Give myself more light here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to take these screws off the evaporator flange. They have to come off anyway. Get the evaporator, when the evaporator is removed. This is where the heater core would have come, tubes would have come out. I'm going to take this off. And we'll take off the heater core retainer clip here. It's not really necessary to get the bottom of the case off. And I make sure I got all the screws removed. Alright, so the bottom of the case should come off. Might require a little prying. Oh, sorry about that. Just a little wiggling and it's off. There's the inside. This is a somewhat clean unit. This area in here, this is where your drain is. So if people have had experience where they've gotten water under the carpet, especially the passenger side, what happens is debris gets collected in here. As you can see, this debris here, like I said, this is pretty clean, but I've seen these things completely plugged up. This filled with all sorts of garbage. It'll block the drain hole, and then what happens is water starts to fill up and above the case seam and then right onto the floor in the car. So this is very important that this is clean. This will be all pressure washed when I'm done, and probably some sanitizer in there so it smells nice when it's all put back together. Alright, so this is the evaporator and it's the expansion valve. Now this will slide right out. Put this aside. If you're working on this thing, it's going to have Freon oil coming out of it. So you get Freon oil, it's like getting brake fluid all over the place. It gets all over the floor and it's on your feet. So I suggest you make sure it's drained out, or you have those holes plugged or taped over. So I'm going to put this aside for now. Alright, so this is the mixed door damper, which is driven by the motor that's mounted here. Okay, and what this does is this provides air, allows air to come across the evaporator into the case, cold air, or it will open up. It's closed right now, so right now it's only allowing the hot air from the heater core. So it'll open up, and air will now allow to be passed through the evaporator, cold air into the cabin. Normally when you take one of these apart, you're going to set your temperature sensor or your temperature control in the climate control unit to full cold. That'll shut these all the way, and the motor will be set in the cold position. So when you take it apart and you put it back together exactly the way you took it out, you'll have no problems. Otherwise, again, you'll have to go back to the manual and sync the motor to the doors, and I also provide instructions to that in my do-it-yourself kit. So we want to open this up just a little bit so we can clear the doors, and it also helps we take out the temperature probe. Get turn it in and slide it out. Temperature probe's out of the way. Now we can just pull these rods out, put them aside, and we can remove this, which is again going to be clean. Foam on this is not too bad. This is not a customer's unit. This is my unit that I've had it as a spare. So, but this is all going to be cleaned off, new foam put on. All right. There is up in here, this piece, you have to be careful. This piece will fall out once you open it up. It gets put aside. I'm going to show you some alignment pins, which you want to be careful if you're cleaning this unit. You do not want to break. You can have a habit of putting this thing down on the ground hard, and it'll snap the alignment pins off, and it'll go back together without them, but it's not a good idea that you want to snap them to begin with. Alright, so the rest of this case has a bunch of screws going around. And take all the screws apart, all off. And take this off just because I'm going to clean under it. Put that in my bowl of parts. This screw here was for the vent that's on the side carpet in the car. It usually gets left on, and everybody breaks the vent off when they're taking it apart. So let's see, these screws can stay on there for the motor drive, but I'm going to take them off too. I like to strip everything off the unit. More screws here. When you're cleaning this, like I said, I use a pressure washer, 3,000 pound pressure washer, which the hardest part is getting the old glue off. The foam comes right off, but getting the old glue off is a pain in the neck. You can use Goo Gone, soak it in Goo Gone, it'll help. You can use, if you're very careful, lacquer thinner, but lacquer thinner will tend to melt the plastic if you keep it on too long. I learned that the hard way a long time ago. But I have been using a pressure washer for years now. It's the fastest method to get all this stuff perfectly clean. It is a bit messy when I do it. I usually get soaked, but it's worth it. All right, there's one more thing you need to do. You see this clip in here? The clip has to come off. Just put your finger on top, pry it off, put that aside. All right, now there is one. I'll make sure we got all those screws gone. All right, now, the only screw we don't want to forget, inside there is a screw. You're going to need a long shaft screwdriver. Get in there. By the way, I am using that's a Japanese, it's not a Phillips, it's a Japanese driver. Not called a Phillips. It looks like a Phillips, but the angles on these things are different. All the screws in the NSX, being JDM car, use a screwdriver, a Japanese spec screwdriver. This is just your standard number 2 Phillips, which is the only long one I have, which works fine on these screws. But if you get into an area where screws are tight and hard to turn, you need the special screwdriver. Alright, so that's loose. I'm going to just shake that out. There it is. Alright, Now the case is ready to come apart. You're going to have these damper doors in there. Now if you've never done this before, you might want to take some photos as you're taking it apart so you can remember how it goes back together. My do-it-yourself instructions are pretty thorough, but it helps. I always recommend that you do take photos. So just push the shafts out. Alright, so that's the inside of the housing. More insulation. If you're going to pressure wash this, be very careful. You can pressure wash right through this or pull it off. So it's all glued on. I usually just stick them in the utility sink and scrub them with a brush, unless they're really bad and they're soaked with oil. So this is your door for the let me get this unit orientated right. Alright, so this would be so this is your door for your vent control, which vents it's going to go out of. Alright, this is your upper vent. Alright, for right where the clock is. And this is your defrost panel. Alright, so these just come right out. And that's pretty much it. Gonna clean this all up, get it ready to go. Oh, and by the way, there's the piece I just told you about. Alright, put that away, forgot. There's two other pieces in here which you want to pull out. Right here, these are deflectors. They slide out, put them aside, because otherwise you are going to drop them somewhere and not realize that you dropped them. And they're probably sitting wherever you clean this up. If it's out in the lawn, you're going to be digging out and around the lawn looking for them. So that's it. When I put it back together, I'll do part 2 of the video.